Good morning, Rita Ora. We're talking about you.
Rita Ora is famous for what exactly? Well, that depends on who you ask. If you're in the UK, she's a chart-topping pop superstar with multiple #1 singles. But if you're in the US, she's that girl from 50 Shades soundtrack, or maybe the one who hosted America's Next Top Model for one season. The thing about Rita Ora is, on paper, she was set up to be the next big global superstar. She had the kind of industry debut most artists would sell their entire streaming catalog for. Jay-Z as her label boss, a major record deal with Roc Nation, huge brand partnerships, magazine covers, and songs written by some of the biggest producers in pop. She wasn't just in the game, she was supposed to run it. But somehow, between all of that hype and today, the plan fell apart. The US market never fully embraced her, and at a certain point, it felt like people recognized her face more from red carpets than from her actual music. Hello everybody, it's Nessi. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, we're diving into one of the strangest career trajectories in modern pop, the kind where all the puzzle pieces are technically there, but the final picture still doesn't make sense. We're dissecting the highs, the lows, and why Rita Ora had every advantage and still didn't become the superstar she was supposed to be. So without further ado, let's dive in. In 2008, at just 18 years old, Rita Ora auditioned for Eurovision. Yes, that very Eurovision where the outfits are louder than the actual songs. She made it through, but then left before the show even aired because apparently she wasn't ready for the challenge. Instead, she started uploading covers to YouTube and doing background vocals for other artists, and here's where her hustle really kicked in. She wasn't just waiting for a record deal to find her, she was actively meeting producers, doing sessions, and building connections.
I interned at a recording studio and I was making people tea and mopping the floors for free and delivering backing vocals for free for people that needed harmonies, Craig David being one of them. And I was there, I was ready, I was available, I was existing within the atmosphere, and I was there at the right time.
One of those connections landed her in front of Roc Nation, as in Jay-Z's Roc Nation. If you were signed there in the early 2010s, you were either already famous or about to be. They had Rihanna, J. Cole, Willow Smith, artists who weren't just making hits but shaping pop culture. So when 19-year-old Rita Ora signed in 2009, the plan was clear. She was going to be their next big global superstar. She spent the next few years prepping, recording, doing features, making sure her debut would hit a full force. And yes, in the UK, it worked almost immediately. Her debut album Aura dropped in 2012 and went straight to #1. 4 singles from that album hit #1 in the UK. R.I.P., which is my personal favorite. I used to be obsessed with this song. How We Do, Hot Right Now, The media was obsessed. Rita wasn't just up and coming, she was everywhere. Music magazines, talk shows, festivals. She had the voice, the look, the personality, and the industry was treating her like she was destined to be the next household name in pop. And here's the thing, in 2012 there was no reason to believe she wouldn't be. The charts were full of artists making that jump from local stardom to global domination. Think Adele, Ed Sheeran, even One Direction. Rita had the same machinery behind her plus something extra, an A-list mentor who was basically known for turning artists into brands. The stage was set. All she had to do was take the UK success, plant the flag in America, and watch the whole world follow. And well, let's just say that's where things stopped going according to plan. So here's the thing about being signed to Roc Nation in the early 2010s. There was one artist who was essentially the blueprint for pop stardom at the time.
What's up? I'm Rihanna.
And unfortunately for Rita, the industry has a bad habit of trying to copy-paste success. They looked at Rihanna's rise and said, great, let's do that again. But the problem, the original Rihanna was still very much around and still dominating.
Bitch, don't try me. I am Rihanna. And Stella McCartney.
The comparisons started immediately. The hair, the styling, the overall vibe. You didn't have to squint too hard to see why people were calling Rita Rihanna 2.0. And here's the part where the marketing backfired. Instead of leaning into what made her unique, Rita's early image felt like it was built to fit the Rihanna mold. This created two problems. First, if you're a fan of Rihanna, you already have Rihanna. You don't need a slightly different version. Second, if you're Rita, you're stuck in this impossible position of trying to prove you're not just the label's backup plan while also being marketed exactly like the label's backup plan. To make things even more awkward, Roc Nation was definitely prioritizing Rihanna's career because, you know, she was Rihanna. This meant if both artists had singles ready around the same time, guess whose song was going to get the bigger push? Hint, not Rita. And let's be real, even if Rita's music had been completely different, it's hard to win in a head-to-head with someone who's already an established global superstar. It's like entering a cooking competition and finding out Gordon Ramsay is also competing. You could make a perfect dish, but you're still losing to the guy who owns half the restaurant industry. By the time Rita Ora started focusing on the US market, the Rihanna comparisons weren't just an annoying talking point, they were overshadowing her music. And once your image becomes the main conversation instead of your songs, breaking into a new market becomes very, very difficult. After dominating the UK charts, the next step for Rita Ora was obvious: conquer America. And on paper, she had all the ingredients. Major label backing, check. Big name producers and writers, check. A track record of radio hits, also check. But here's the thing about the US market. It's like trying to join a very exclusive, slightly chaotic high school clique. They already have their pop girls, and unless you bring something really unique to the table, you're basically just that new kid who's nice, I guess, but not invited to sit at the cool table. Rita's debut album, Ora, didn't even get an official US release when it first dropped in 2012. Instead, she spent her early American career releasing singles and features here and there to try to build recognition. One of her biggest US moments was actually not a solo track. It was the Iggy Azalea collab Black Widow in 2014. That song hit number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was everywhere for basically an entire summer. However, the problem, most people remembered it as that Iggy song and barely registered Rita as the feature vocalist. She was in the music video, yes, but if you blinked during her scenes, you might have missed the fact that she was supposed to be half of the song's appeal. Her own US singles didn't stick the same way. Tracks like I Will Never Let You Down,
When you say you've had enough and you might just give it up,
had strong production and catchy hooks, but they didn't get enough push to become the massive hits they needed to be. And in pop, timing is everything. If your single doesn't explode, you're already behind on the next one. To make matters worse, her public presence in America was starting to lean more towards celebrity appearances than music releases. She was showing up at the Met Gala, on red carpets, in fashion campaigns, which which, don't get me wrong, is great for exposure, but it can also blur your brand. People will start recognizing your face without really knowing why they recognized it. And that's exactly what happened. In the US, Rita became famous adjacent. She was everywhere, but she wasn't everywhere for her music. And when your primary goal is to establish yourself as a recording artist, that's a huge problem. And by the mid-2010s, the gap between the UK success and her US presence was becoming too big to ignore. And unfortunately, the next chapter of her career wouldn't fix that gap, it would make it even bigger. If there's one thing pop stars dread more than a bad single, it's a bad contract. And by 2015, Rita Ora was done playing nice. She filed a lawsuit against Roc Nation, claiming the label had essentially forgotten about her. According to Rita, she was ready to work, ready to release new music, but Roc Nation was busy managing their sports division, busy focusing on their other superstar clients, and apparently busy doing everything except pushing Rita's career forward. In her lawsuit, she argued that she had been left orphaned by the label, which, as dramatic as that sounds, kind of made sense. Rita was signed when Roc Nation was still under the umbrella of Sony, but when they moved distribution to Universal, she was allegedly one of the artists who got lost in the shuffle. Now, pop music is a momentum game. You take a year or two off, the public can forgive you. Take multiple years off and people start forgetting you exist, especially in a market you haven't even fully broken into yet. For Rita, this legal battle meant her music career was essentially on pause in the US at the exact time she needed to be releasing more music, not less. The lawsuit eventually settled in 2016 and Rita officially parted ways with Roc Nation. She signed with Atlantic Records not long after, ready for what was supposed to be her big comeback. But, of course there's a but, here's the problem. Pop culture had moved on. In the years Rita was tangled in contract drama, the landscape changed. New artists like Dua Lipa, which by the way I just made a video about Dua Lipa, so please check it out if you want to. Camila Cabello and Halsey had entered the scene and claimed their spots on the charts. Meanwhile, Rita was basically starting over, trying to convince people to care again after being mostly absent from the conversation. When her second album, Phoenix, finally dropped in 2018, a full 6 years after her debut, it actually did pretty well in the UK. Songs like Anywhere and Let You Love Me reminded everyone that Rita Ora could still deliver a solid pop hit, but in the US, it barely made a dent. By the time the legal dust settled, the hype machine that once positioned her as the next big thing had completely run out of steam. And as we will see in the next chapter, instead of rebuilding it the same way, Rita decided to take her career in a very different direction. By the late 2010s, Rita Ora had two options. One, try to force a US music breakthrough, or two, pivot. She chose the pivot. Now, Rita's always been good at playing the celebrity game. Even when her music wasn't charting in America, she was still visible. Magazine covers, brand campaigns, TV appearances. She wasn't disappearing, she was just everywhere for reasons that didn't always involve music. She leaned hard into becoming a multi-hyphenate singer, actress, TV host, model, professional red carpet walker. She's seriously everywhere. She's on every red carpet. She even hosted America's Next Top Model for a season and also appeared as a judge on The Masked Singer UK. And of course, we can't forget her acting career. She had roles in big movie franchises like 50 Shades of Grey and Fast and Furious, though in the latter she was on screen for like 5 seconds. I just remembered, wasn't she in like Maleficent or something? Hold on, let me Google this. Oh, Descendants. She was actually pretty good in this one. Yeah, so she acts too. And besides singing, acting, hosting, fashion brands love Rita Ora. We're talking Adidas or Adidas. Listen, I don't know how to pronounce this one. I've never heard of this brand in my life. I think it's DKNY.
Y, but most people pronounce it as DKNY.
And also Rimmel. She became the face of so many campaigns that at one point it almost felt like she had more endorsement deals than singles. From a business standpoint, this was genius. She was building a global name that wasn't solely dependent on how her last single performed. From a music branding standpoint though, things got a little blurry because here's the thing, in pop, clarity is power. Taylor Swift equals storytelling. Billie Eilish equals dark alternative pop. Dua Lipa equals disco revival. Rita Ora, well, Rita Ora was Rita Ora, and that's not bad, but it's also not specific enough to create a passionate, loyal music fan base, especially in a competitive US market. This is where the gap between being famous and being a pop star becomes really obvious. By diversifying her brand, Rita guaranteed longevity in entertainment, but she also made it harder to tell whether music was the main focus or just one of many side hustles. And when your audience isn't sure, they tend to move on to artists whose main focus is clear. Still, it's not like the pivot was a failure. It just cemented Rita Ora as a celebrity who sings rather than a singer who became a celebrity, which depending on your priorities might not be the worst trade-off. That's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this one. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Rita Ora was underrated, or was the hype just too high from the start? And if you were her manager back in 2012, what would you have done differently? Also, if you have any suggestions for future videos, please let me know. I'm always adding ideas to my list. And with that being said, thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you very soon.